case we have never met, I'm Michael Price, and I want to help you succeed in growing your business.
Welcome. I'm Michael Price, your host.
Today is May 21st, and I'm Nancy, your co-host.
Imagine, for just a second, that you're sitting down to play a high-stakes board game, and the prize for winning this game is just massive.
Like incredibly massive.
Right. We are talking millions or sometimes even billions of dollars in government contracts. So you have all your pieces meticulously set up. You have this brilliant strategy in mind, and you finally make your first move.
Okay, I'm with you.
But right as you take your hand off the piece, the person sitting across the table reaches over, grabs the official rule book, rips out a page, and just slides in a newly printed one.
Oh man, and you just have to adapt right then and there.
Exactly. But they do this after every single turn. I mean, you buy a hotel on Park Avenue, but before your turn even ends, the bank informs you that Park Avenue has just been rezoned as a protected wetland.
So your hotel is now an illegal structure.
Yeah. You're trying to execute this master plan, but the very rules of the game are actively being rewritten while you play.
It sounds like an absolute nightmare. I mean, you would spend infinitely more time just trying to read the new rules or, argue with the bank than you would actually playing the game.
Exactly.
The human cost of that, the sheer stress and burnout, it would just be entirely unsustainable.
And yet, that is exactly what the modern business environment feels like right now, especially if you're operating anywhere near government contracting.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a stack of industry research today, and our mission is to figure out how artificial intelligence is stepping into this exact scenario. We really want to understand how AI can take the overwhelming reactive, anxiety-inducing headache of compliance.
And there's a lot of anxiety there.
Oh, for sure. And actually flip it into a proactive, strategic, competitive advantage.
It's a massive paradigm shift because, for decades, compliance was viewed strictly as a defensive play. It was just a necessary evil. You basically just wanted to keep your head down and avoid getting in trouble.
Right. But keeping your head down just doesn't work anymore because the sheer volume of changes hitting contractors right now is staggering.
It really is.
I mean, we're seeing constant rapid-fire updates to the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the ARR, which is basically the Bible for government contractors.
Yep, the ultimate rule book.
And then you have new iterations of the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC 2.0, and that's moving aggressively towards strict enforcement. Then you layer on tightening expectations around FedRAMP for cloud security, plus new diversity, equity, and inclusion-related reporting. I mean, we're looking at the facts on the ground. And the reality is that the rule book is expanding in every possible direction simultaneously.
At light speed, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's unpack this. How big of a shift is this really for the people out there in the trenches?
Well, it fundamentally rewrites how a business has to operate. Historically, compliance was treated as a point-in-time event. You spent a month prepping for an annual audit. You checked all your boxes, you put a giant, heavy 3-ring binder on a shelf, and then
you just breathed a sigh of relief.
Exactly. And you went back to your actual work.
It's the classic, cram for the test and forget it the next day strategy.
Precisely. But in the landscape you just described, that strategy is a death sentence for a company. Compliance has evolved into a continuous cross-functional discipline.
Wow.
Yeah, it's no longer just a back-office administrative chore that's relegated to the legal team. It's the core operational reality that dictates whether a firm wins work or whether they face severe delivery disruptions, brutal audit findings, and heavy financial penalties.
It's essentially the difference between going to the doctor for a pulse check once a year versus wearing a continuous heart monitor that tracks every single beat.
That is a phenomenal way to put it. And to validate just how seriously the market is taking this shift, we actually found a fascinating piece of data from the upcoming 2026 Uninet GAG benchmarking report.
Oh, nice. What did they find?
According to their numbers, 36% of government contractors are actively using AI for compliance right now, and another 42% are actively exploring it.
Wait, really? So nearly 80% of the entire market is either already deploying AI for this, or they're looking to do it immediately.
Basically, yes.
So if you're entirely on the sidelines right now, just hoping the old binder on the shelf method works, you are already miles behind the competition.
You are, and I want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a moment. Whether you're actively prepping a bid for a massive federal contract, or you're just trying to navigate complex, shifting regulations in your own specific industry, understanding how AI is integrating into the compliance workflow is the ultimate shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to explore how solving one layer of compliance naturally exposes the next vulnerability and how AI seals those gaps. This is really how you gain a sharp competitive edge in a heavily regulated world.
Let's jump right into the deep end then. To even survive in this environment, it seems like the foundational requirement, like the absolute baseline, is just having a clear view of what the current rules actually are.
Exactly.
Which, going back to our board game metaphor, is really difficult when the opponent keeps ripping pages out of the rule book. I mean, you can't comply with a rule if you don't know it exists.
And that is exactly where companies bleed resources. Right now, updates to the FAR are impacting contracts and execution expectations at a dizzying pace.
Right?
If your company is relying on a team of human beings to manually refresh government websites every morning, read hundreds of pages of the dense Federal Register, and then try to figure out what changed overnight while you are introducing massive operational risk.
Because human beings get tired. They miss a cross-reference. Or it just takes a team of lawyers 3 solid weeks to read and synthesize a 1,000-page regulatory update.
Right, and during those 3 weeks, your company is operating out of compliance. This is where AI-powered tracking agents enter the picture. They monitor executive and agency-level regulatory changes in real time.
Okay.
But they don't just act as a dumb alert system that pings your inbox saying that, hey, a new rule dropped. The AI actually interprets the new regulatory language.
Okay, I have to challenge this a bit. Because federal legalese is notoriously awful.
Oh, it's the worst.
Right? It's full of double negatives, vague phrasing, and cross-references to obscure laws from like 1982. How on earth does an AI interpret that accurately? Are we just doing a giant keyword search and hoping for the best? Because trusting a robot to play lawyer feels incredibly dangerous.
It's a totally valid pushback, and honestly, if it were just a keyword search, it would be a disaster. But this is where the underlying mechanism of the technology, large language models, and natural language processing becomes so critical.
Okay.
These AI systems don't just look for specific words, they understand semantic context.
Can you give me an example of what semantic context actually looks like in practice?
Sure, let's say a new White House executive order drops, mandating stricter multi-factor authentication for federal software vendors.
Okay, a pretty common scenario.
Right. Now, a traditional keyword search might scan your company's internal documents for the exact phrase multi-factor authentication. If your company handbook happens to call it two-step login, the keyword search misses it entirely.
And then you fail the compliance check.
Exactly. But an LLM understands the meaning of the regulation. It knows that two-step login and multi-factor authentication represent the exact same concept.
Ah, I see. So it maps the meaning of the new federal text directly against the company's specific, nuanced operational documents.
Exactly. And it's crucial to understand that the AI isn't replacing human legal counsel. It is acting as the world's fastest, most obsessive paralegal. It reduces the operational lag.
Right, that makes sense.
Think about the manual process. A rule changes in Washington. A week later, your legal team reads it. Another week later, they meet with operations to discuss it. And a month later, a new process is finally updated.
And for that entire month, you're totally exposed.
Precisely. The AI instantly highlights the exact contract, clauses, and internal processes affected by the new text. It basically hands your legal team the exact needle from the haystack and says, here is how the new rule impacts Project X.
Wow.
It shrinks that window of vulnerability from a month down to minutes.
Okay, so that handles the inbound information. We have our super paralegal telling us the rules the second they change. But knowing the rules is really only half the battle, right? Because once you know the rules, the government eventually comes knocking and demands proof that you're actually following them.
Oh, they always do.
Which means we have to talk about the absolute nightmare that is an audit.
Yes. And the federal government is taking a much more aggressive zero-tolerance approach to audits right now. The leniency we saw a few years ago has entirely gone.
Wow, okay.
And because of that, the old method of static documentation is officially dead.
Paint a picture of that for me. When we say the old method is dead, what does that actually look like for a company?
Think about a traditional audit. The auditor shows up, sits in a stuffy conference room, and asks to see proof of your cybersecurity compliance for a specific project. Panic ensues.
Naturally.
You have executives sweating, employees scrambling through their hard drives, trying to find a spreadsheet that Steve from IT supposedly updated 8 months ago.
Oh, classic Steve.
Right. And when they finally find it, they realize Steve didn't actually update it, so the data is completely wrong.
Yeah. The moment you hit save or print on a spreadsheet, it's already obsolete.
Exactly. Handing an auditor a snapshot of your compliance from 6 months ago is a guaranteed failure today. Firms are now required to establish what the industry calls continuous audit readiness.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How does a company actually do that without driving its employees insane? I mean, you can't have people manually logging every single action they take every hour of the day.
You can't, which is why AI is the only viable bridge. AI establishes continuous readiness by pulling telemetry data directly from your IT systems, your finance software, and your HR portals. It constantly monitors the actual digital exhaust of your company as the work happens.
So it isn't asking Steve to update a spreadsheet. It's just looking at the server logs itself to verify Steve did the work,
Yes, it maps that live evidence directly to your internal controls.
right?
If a new rule demands a specific type of data encryption, the AI continuously assesses the telemetry from your servers to ensure that encryption is actively running. If it isn't, the AI immediately flags the gap and recommends steps to fix it long before an auditor ever walks into the building.
I love this. It's the difference between cramming for a massive final exam the night before and probably failing because there's just way too much material to memorize versus having an AI tutor that automatically grades your homework in real time every single day.
Exactly.
You're never caught off guard because the tutor has been verifying your answers all semester long.
That is the perfect analogy. You entirely avoid that massive internal disruption and resource strain that usually paralyzes a company right before an audit. The system is just constantly humming in the background, building your audit trails automatically.
Okay, so we know the rules instantly and we're grading our own homework continuously. It feels like our own house is in perfect order. We've built a fortress.
Yeah.
But let's look at the foundation for a second. What happens if your internal operations are flawless, but the guy you hired to pour the concrete is cutting corners,
Oh, this is a big one.
right? Because you're the prime contractor. If your subcontractor messes up, are you still on the hook?
You are absolutely on the hook, and this is where the conversation usually gets very uncomfortable for prime contractors. You can have a flawless internal operation, but if the subcontractors making up your supply chain are compromised, your entire eligibility for federal awards is threatened.
That's terrifying.
It is. The government expects you to vouch for everyone you bring to the table.
And the rules governing those supply chains are getting significantly tighter, aren't they?
They are. Let's look at a very specific scenario. Let's say you're a prime contractor building a new reconnaissance drone for the Department of Defense. You need 1,000 specific microchips for the navigation system. The subcontractor you hired, a Tier 3 supplier down the chain, decides they want to save a few pennies, so quietly they switch from the approved domestic manufacturer to an unauthorized overseas vendor.
Oh, wow. And they don't tell you because they just want the margin.
Exactly. Now, under the FR's Buy American thresholds, the required domestic content for a product to be compliant is currently 65%, but it's jumping to 75% in 2029.
Okay?
And under the cybersecurity rule CMMC, you also have to verify that any subcontractor handling controlled unclassified information, or CUI, has rock-solid digital defenses. That unauthorized overseas vendor likely violates both of those massive regulations.
So, what does this all mean for the prime contractor? Do you basically have to become a mini regulatory agency for every single company you hire?
It definitely feels that way.
Because tracking the origin of every tiny component across dozens of suppliers sounds practically impossible without an army of procurement officers.
In the past, it was incredibly expensive and heavily reliant on trust. You sent emails, you asked for signed attestations, and you maintained massive chaotic tracking sheets. You essentially found out about a breach after the product was built.
Which is too late.
Right. But AI fundamentally changes this equation by introducing predictive risk exposure.
Predictive. How does it predict a supply chain failure before it happens?
The AI ingests historical data, delivery timelines, past compliance attestations, and global supply chain feeds. In our drone example, the AI scans the incoming supply chain data and catches the anomaly in the origin code of those microchips before the parts are even shipped.
Wait, it catches it before the purchase order is even finalized?
Yes. It flags that specific subcontractor and alerts the prime contractor. Hey, based on their current certification status and the incoming 2029 Buy American thresholds, this specific supplier is highly likely to cause a compliance breach on the drone project.
That is wild.
It gives you the power to intervene or swap suppliers long before the risk ever physically enters your product.
That is incredible. So you aren't just reacting to a failure. The AI is actively guarding the perimeter.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the external rules, the continuous audits, and the supply chain. But there's one piece we haven't touched. We've been looking outward. What about looking inward?
Meaning what exactly?
Our own internal company handbook, our policies and procedures. If our internal rulebook is outdated, doesn't this entire beautifully automated system essentially collapse?
It absolutely does. Because of the sheer velocity of regulatory upheaval we've been discussing, any internal corporate policy written even a year or two ago is likely obsolete today.
That is wild to think about. A company policy drafted in 2024 is basically an antique in this environment.
It truly is, and this applies to everything: human resources, IT protocols, cybersecurity standards, project accounting.
All of it.
Yeah, if your internal finance policy dictates a specific billing practice, but the FAR updated the rules surrounding that practice 6 months ago, well, your internal handbook is actively mandating non-compliance.
Ouch.
Your employees could be following the company rulebook to the letter and getting the company in massive legal trouble because the rulebook itself is wrong.
Can you give me a tangible example of how that happens? What kind of rule change trips a company up internally?
Let's look at something called cost allowability. This simply dictates what expenses the government will actually reimburse you for when you execute a contract.
Okay.
Let's say your internal travel policy states that an executive can book a business class flight for international travel, and that cost gets passed through to the client. But suddenly, the federal government issues a new rule stating they will only ever reimburse for coach class, regardless of the destination.
So an employee flies to London in business class, follows the company handbook perfectly. But when you bill the government, you're suddenly in breach of contract.
Exactly. And doing manual structured policy reviews across a massive enterprise to catch those little discrepancies is incredibly tedious.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
But AI can now ingest all your internal policy documents, your hundreds of pages of handbooks, and compare them instantly against the real-time regulatory updates. It flags the specific paragraph about business class flights, and it actually recommends exactly how that policy should be rewritten to align with the new federal expectation.
Okay, hold on. I'm all for automation, but I have to push back here.
Sure.
I do not want an AI autonomously rewriting my company's HR handbook or finance policies.
Yeah.
That sounds like a massive legal liability. What if the AI hallucinates a rule that doesn't exist?
That is a very perceptive concern, and it's exactly why the system is built on a human-in-the-loop model. The AI is not autonomously publishing new policies to the company intranet.
Okay, good.
It's drafting the revision, highlighting the exact FIR clause it correlates to, and presenting it to a human executive. The AI says, "I found this discrepancy. Here is the new federal rule. Here is a suggested rewrite of paragraph 4. A human expert reviews it, verifies the logic, and clicks approve.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a hyper-vigilant legal editor who reads your company handbook every single night, and I instantly hands you a red line version the second a paragraph becomes a legal liability.
Yep.
But the human still holds the pen.
Exactly. It ensures your internal corporate compass is perfectly calibrated to true north at all times without removing human judgment from the equation.
So, looking at the big picture, we have this AI reading external regulations. It's grading our audit homework continuously. It's predicting supply chain risk with our vendors, and it's redlining our internal handbooks. It honestly sounds like magic. It sounds like an absolute silver bullet for compliance. But there has to be a catch. What is the catch here?
There is a very significant catch, and it is where most companies completely fail when they try to adopt this technology.
Okay, what is it?
Every single piece of AI magic we've discussed today relies entirely on one fundamental thing: the fuel it is fed, the data. If a firm's internal data architecture is fragmented, siloed, or inaccurate, the AI's compliance oversight will be inherently flawed.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out. It's the oldest rule in computing.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is a firm can only be confident in the AI they are using to protect them if they are entirely confident in their underlying data. Today, data integrity is completely synonymous with compliance credibility.
Right.
The new regulations all demand traceability, transparency, and accuracy.
But isn't most corporate data inherently messy? I mean, most companies I know have their HR data sitting in Workday, their finance data over in Oracle, and their operations team is just running everything off a massive custom Excel spreadsheet that crashes twice a week.
That is exactly the problem. If your data lives in disconnected silos, the AI cannot see the full picture. You cannot have an AI act as a hypervigilant legal editor if it only has access to half the chapters of the book.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Buying a sophisticated AI compliance tool without first fixing your underlying data architecture is like dropping a Ferrari engine into a golf cart. It might sound impressive when you turn the key, but the moment you hit the gas, the whole thing is going to tear itself apart.
That is a brutal visual, but it makes total sense. So how does a company actually fix the golf cart?
Firms have to do the hard, unglamorous work of integrating their core systems to create a single source of truth. They have to build data lakes or set up robust API integrations so that systems talk to each other.
All right.
Your HR software must flow seamlessly into your finance system, which must communicate with your project management dashboard.
And once you build that single source of truth, once the systems are finally talking to each other, what does the AI actually do with it?
Once the foundation is unified, the AI can sweep across that entire data landscape and connect dots that a human never could. It can look at an employee's time card submitted in the project management tool, cross-reference it with the allowable labor categories in the contract database, and flag a billing anomaly the exact moment the employee hits submit.
Wow.
It catches the error long before it ever becomes an invoice sent to the federal government. The data is the absolute bedrock of the entire competitive advantage.
This has been a genuinely eye-opening journey. Let's summarize the big picture for everyone listening. The traditional way of handling compliance, scrambling to manually read updates, paying massive legal fees for synthesis, panicking and cramming for audits at the last second, and just praying your subcontractors aren't secretly using banned parts. That method is dead.
Totally dead.
It's a massive resource drain. It leads to substandard audit outcomes, and ultimately it gets you disqualified from winning work.
It's entirely unsustainable in today's regulatory environment. You simply cannot throw enough human bodies at the problem to solve it.
Right? But by embracing AI across the areas we covered, building a real-time tracking framework with an AI paralegal, pulling telemetry for continuous audit readiness, predicting subcontractor risk before POs are signed, keeping internal policies dynamically updated, and ultimately unifying your data to fuel the whole thing, compliance transforms.
It really does.
It completely sheds that defensive back office reputation. It becomes a true proactive competitive advantage. You actually win more federal work because the government inherently trusts your operational integrity more than the next guys. You have flipped the script.
It is a profound operational advantage today. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an incredibly important question for the future.
Oh, what's that?
As these AI tools become more widespread, and if AI eventually levels the playing field so that every competing firm has a flawless, automated, continuous compliance record, what will become the next great differentiator?
Oh, wow. That is a fantastic question. If everyone has the Ferrari engine, how do you win the race?
Right. If perfect, automated compliance becomes the baseline standard rather than a unique competitive advantage, how do you stand out to a government buyer?
That's fascinating.
Will human strategic creativity, nuanced problem solving, and genuine relationship building become the only ways left to truly distinguish your firm in the contracting world? As we automate the rules, the uniquely human elements of business might become our most valuable assets. It's something every leader needs to be actively thinking about right now.
That is a phenomenal thought to end on. Because to bring it all back to our board game, as much as the game changes and as fast as the AI can whisper the new rules in your ear, there is still always a human being sitting at the board, looking across the table and deciding the next strategic move. We want to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive today. Whether you're actively bidding on federal contracts or just trying to navigate a shifting regulatory landscape in your own industry, take a moment today to look at your own data. Think about how integrating AI could pull your team out of the reactive scramble and flip the script on compliance for you. Until next time, keep your strategy sharp and your data clean.
A special thank you to MarketUS.com for furnishing us this information. You can reach them at MarketUS.com or call them at 954-636-3232. Before we go, this deep dive was created by the MarketUS.com team. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's right below the subscribe link.